Hello, everyone. Welcome to Gen AI Talkin' 10, brought to you by SS&C Blue Prism. I'm Brad. He is Satish. And let's talk about Agentic AI. That is certainly the biggest topic right now in this whole spectrum of generative AI. It seems like every day we hear something new about Agentic and how there's a new company, there's a new service, or even some of the top LLM providers now coming forward and saying, here's what we're doing in the agentic space. So let's break it down and just explain what it is and then talk about kind of the impact of it, if you will. So Satish, take it away.
Thank you, Brad. So first, let's start with the definition of agentic, because frankly, given how nascent this topic is, there's so many different definitions and not one agreed global definition just yet. To me, agentic means an autonomous or semi-autonomous systems of agents. I mean, I always think of digital workers for some reason when I think of agents. But then these agents interact with each other or applications and the environments they're in, making decisions and executing tasks. So I mean, three characteristics of agents, agentic AI, it's autonomous or semi-autonomous. They interact with their environments, make decisions, execute tasks. So maybe four, right, KV? If you take one more with the making decisions part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are three things that make up what is an AI agent, right? That reasoning or ability to make decisions, that is, planning or adapting based on feedback, because this is a closed loop kind of feedback system, because otherwise how does the agent change over time as the environment changes or the conditions change in which they are working, right? You can see how, the economy will change, then what, right? Or the conditions might change, the weather, etc. Right?
Right.
Anyway, so there is the reasoning, there is the planning, and then there is the acting, right? But funny enough, think of that as an acronym. It's RPA. So that tells you something a bit deeper. It's RPA with the feedback loop to continue the learning for the agent, right? Reason, plan, react. Now, the reasoning part is interesting, right? It can come from an AI model or maybe an LLM that can drive the intelligence behind the agents, because the agents are, again, software programs. It needs some kind of intelligence, right? And that can come from an AI model or an LLM. The planning, because it needs to plan before it can execute. Hopefully it's not fire ready and aim, right? It has to be, it has to first know what it's doing, then it has to plan and then act. So the planning comes from what the agent has learned over time, or even from a planning tool or an orchestration tool, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's how work gets distributed. We can see a future where work is distributed between human workers and digital workers or agents, as they call them. Right? The AI term is agents, but we have known them as digital workers for the longest time. Now, so that's the planning part. And then action, executing a task based on insight, right? This is where our digital workers, I think, fit really well. The most popular agentic AI frameworks right now, there are three that I've seen. I mean, there are many, but the most popular ones are Crew, AutoGen, and OpenAI Swarm. Like you were saying, all the major providers are coming up with their own agentic framework, because that's where it starts, right? That's the core. How do you put these agents into a framework that's closed loop, that's controllable, that's governable? Otherwise, they can go do things on their own, and nobody controls them, right? So Crew AI is interesting. A lot of people seem to like that, but it's about orchestration of multiple agents, with each agent having a specific role that are collaborating together on tasks, right? There could be hierarchical task execution or delegation, or sequential, right? Now, clearly it's quite new, and what I've heard from people who have used Agentic AI is it's not as robust as expected. which is true of any new technology, as you'd expect, right?
Yeah.
So true AI seems to be the one that's, that's being used, right? OpenAI created something called Swarm. I think they just announced it in October or maybe September. But recently they announced it. Now, it's considered, and they make it clear that it is, really experimental at this time. So that gives you a sense of, if OpenAI is doing the experimental thing, that means it's still really new, this whole space.
Yeah.
Autogen is, the other one that keeps coming up. That's probably a little more mature. But again, there is still more to be done around this whole agentic space. Now, one last thing, I said I mentioned three things, right? Which is True AI, OpenAI Swarm, and Autogen as the agentic frameworks that are being used. Interestingly, you've heard of LangChain before, right? LangChain is a way to orchestrate between AI systems and application and humans, right? Then like you said, a lot of people are taking what they did before and extending it to agentic AI, for example. In this case, LangChain was already developed for orchestration, but they have started supporting agentic workflows for, based on NLP, natural language processing, and precision decisioning for tasks execution. Very interesting space. Lot.
And how do you think the agentic extends or expands the risk that companies really need to get their arms around? This whole the autonomous, the ability to make decisions on its own, change direction. You're right. It's probably a little bit overstated what it can truly do right now, but when it reaches maturity, it's able to act like an independent, autonomous agent. I've got to believe that would present new risk that companies need to mitigate.
Yeah, some of them are, so if you think about the risks that already exist with Gen AI, right? Hallucination or bias. Now, since the agents are being fed by some of these models, what risks exist in the model, like hallucination and bias, will now be acted upon, which is even worse. Because in the past, you could put a human in the loop and kind of manage that, right? But now you're taking something that is not quite perfect, which I'm sure everybody will agree with me that it's not quite perfect, right? There is opportunity for hallucination. I think we do a good job in kind of helping control that, right? By monitoring the input and then monitoring the output with the human in the loop. But, that risk, you're taking something that exists and then extending it to do more. So you are now amplifying that risk that existed by not just looking at insights, but now, also executing based on those insights. That's number one. The other one is around, what can bad actors do with those data? Can you do prompt injections, right? Can you jailbreak? Do things like that, which I'm trying to think, did we talk a lot about that or not? But maybe not. It's okay. Just so people know that, you can engage with an agent. Think of ChatGPT. It's like an agent, right? It's acting like an agent on your behalf and asking the GPT LLM a response to your question, right? But what if I change the question and now somebody is taking action on the output based on my question? If I change the question, if I'm a bad actor, I can go in and inject a different prompt and make downstream things happen in terms of actions that can be really bad, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're using it in regulatory environment, healthcare, financial services. If I want to move millions of dollars, I could inject the right prompt, So these things, are they easy to do? Not necessarily, but they're possible. And as long as they're possible, that risk is pretty high, right?
Yeah. So we're almost out of time, but just real quickly, based on the maturity of the market, do you think most companies are ready for agentic AI right now?
No, actually, I don't think so. At least from our vantage point, from our engagement with our customers, a lot of our customers are still they're probably moving from experimentation into production pilots and so on. We see
Right.
a number of examples like that. But you're taking this to the next level with agentic. Because remember what I said at the beginning, it can be autonomous, which means it can act on its own, which how many people are open to doing that right now, right?
Yeah.
I think they'll experiment with it, Brad. There'll be a lot of experimentation for sure. Agentic AI is very exciting, but there's quite a bit of time before they'll go into production, and we have to help these customers put safeguards around what they're doing so they can be safe. They can be in compliance. They can follow the regulations and so on.
Great. All right. Well, that's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Gen AI Talk in 10.